Pay attention, because time is short. And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of balances in his hand.
Do you see this penny? Every laborer will receive a penny for their labor.
A measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. Do not hurt the oil and wine.
Therefore, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Many are called, but few chosen. Whether you began at the barley harvest and Passover, or the wheat harvest at Shavuot, you receive this penny for the great day of Yahweh. Judah, you are the laborers of the vineyard and the harvest. Wake them up to my Father!
And it was time for the angels to thrust in the sickle, and the earth was reaped.
Shadows start to fade as the truth comes in sight. On the 4th day, he said, let there be light, let there be light.
Pay attention like you've never paid attention before, because the time of Israel's redemption could be right around the corner. But first, to explain what this seal is talking about, you see a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. Hurt not the oil and wine. What's going on here is this is stemming from Jesus' parable in Matthew, where he calls the laborers to the vineyard, and there's some standing idle by the way, and he tells them, why do you stand here idle all the day? And he says, nobody's hired us. And he says, go to the vineyard. So there's all these people going to the vineyard, and what happens is people start becoming laborers to the field. And when even was come, the laborers are all called, beginning from the last to the first. Now, the people that came at the end, they received a penny just like the people that had started way earlier than them. Everybody received a day's wages for their laborers. What is going on here? The reason why there's a measure of wheat for a penny, but there's 3 measures of barley for a penny, is because it's talking about the appointed feasts of God. Passover always begins with the first month when the barley is ripe. Passover is the first feast, and it always begins when the barley is Aviv. This is how God separates his calendar from all the other nations. Because in Israel, you have to have the barley ripe at a certain time to be able to have the first fruits offering of the wheat. So what's happening is, during this time period between Passover and Shavuot, the ones that are laborers to the field, they all receive a penny. Do you remember when Jesus was praying in the garden? 3 times he went to the people and they were all sleeping. Now, because God's in charge of the times and seasons, many people don't know what month or what feast day that will be on. This is why the day of Yehovah comes in an hour you don't expect, because he's in charge of the times and seasons. Now, when Jesus went and prayed and he came back each time to the people in the garden, what were they doing? They were all found sleeping. Why? What this is depicting is from the proverb where it says, a wise man will gather in summer, but a son that sleeps in harvest is one that causes shame. Summer is the beginning of the year. See, many in today's society think that there's spring, summer, fall, winter. No, biblically speaking, there's only 2 seasons. There's summer and winter. Spring and fall are modern day constructs that give us transitional periods between these 2 seasons. This world is built on laws of polarity between one extreme of one thing and another. That's what summer and winter is. So do not get confused when people say this is in spring, that's in fall. Those things don't exist when you're speaking about things from the Bible. But always remember, God is in charge of the times and seasons. So he said in Daniel chapter 2 verse 21, he changes times and seasons, he removes kings and sets up kings, he gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. So God is in control of the times and the seasons. Now, I've discussed this in other videos before about how the timing of Israel's redemption will take place, and it all depends on when that first month is. Now, if you're someone, for example, that says, well, the first month was in March, and another person says, oh, the first month was in April, it doesn't matter, because depending on your perspective, this day could be viewed as Shavuot or the second Passover. So it doesn't matter how you perceive this. That's how God's putting this all together. Now, what's interesting about this year is something very unexpected happened. If you look at the barley reports, which I'll show a video here in a minute, but the barley reports showed Aviv barley in Israel very, very early as February 24th, which that would be 5 days after the new moon. Now, many of the barley reports, even on into the month of March, much of the barley in the fields were already brown.
And if you look, the hill is already turning brown. But I want you to look at the barley. Look at the barley right here. You see that? Watch. It's brown. Jehovah demands the first fruits. He declares the month of Aviv, the month of green ears, not the month of brown ears. Today is Sunday, March 15th, so you just figure that. I don't know what it is exactly.
Now, there's always discussion between groups on sides where they say, no, this is the first month, and the other side says, no, this is the first month. That's by design, because God's in charge of the times and seasons. So no matter what your perspective is, the day of Yehovah and the redemption of Israel will take place on a specific time period, no matter your perspective on when the year started. Let me make that clear. But take a look at this video and you'll see clearly there's plenty of barley in the fields as early as February.
I said, hallelujah, we've got a field of barley. This is a field of barley. A whole field of barley. A lot of barley. I don't know what happened to the wheat, but there's a lot of barley here. This is amazing. This is not just roadside barley. This is a field of barley. And this barley is beautiful. It's tall. It's green. It's all starting to lay over. I mean, it's a little...
So as you can see here, this happened way earlier than people expected. I didn't expect it to be this early. I always expected this to come during a leap year. But what this seal is depicting is there's laborers that are called to the field. Now, who are the laborers? Remember, Jesus said the harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray that there would be laborers sent to the field. Now, this is stemming from Hosea chapter 6. I want you to see what's going on here. And it says, I have seen a horrible thing in the house of Israel. There's whoredom in Ephraim. Israel's defiled. Judah, he set a harvest for thee when I return the captivity of my people. So what's God saying here? He's saying, Judah, the Jews, you are going to lead the harvest. Well, what harvest? Ephraim, Israel, the house of Israel is defiled. They're joined to idols. So what Judah is supposed to be doing to be the laborers is they're supposed to be getting them to come back to the God of Israel and come out of idolatry. We are supposed to lead that. That is what the fields are. Look around in the world. For you that have left the church, for you that are Jewish, you understand what this is talking about. To the people in the church, you don't understand this because you're in that realm and you don't understand that you're in the house of idolatry. The day of Yahweh, or the day of Yehovah, is going to expose the nakedness of the people in the world. It's going to show who kept God's covenant and who did not. So if you're not keeping his covenant, keeping his Sabbaths, worshiping Yehovah or Yahweh, if you're not doing that, then you're going to be found naked to your shame that day. And Judah and the Jews, we who are keeping the covenant, we are supposed to be leading that harvest to get people to wake up and come back to the covenant. So no matter if you were converted at the beginning in February, which might have been the first month, or you converted and you came back to the God of Israel and professed him and started keeping his Sabbaths towards the end, which you'll see is the timing of Shavuot, it doesn't matter. Everybody receives a penny for their labor. But if you weren't somebody who kept the covenant, if you weren't somebody that was a laborer in the field, you don't receive a penny. The penny is a day's wages. Now for what day? For the day of Yehovah, the day of Yahweh. So you escape the day of Yahweh. You receive a penny, so you escape. That's what this whole seal is talking about. The church has got to wake up to what's going on. Christians read in Daniel that it says that this supposed Antichrist that they look at says he'll seek to change times and laws. Well, this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, who already did that in the time of the Maccabees. He persecuted all the Jews, and he told all of them that they're not allowed to keep the Sabbaths. They're not allowed to circumcise their children. They're supposed to eat pork. Everything that the Torah said that you're not supposed to do, Antiochus Epiphanes changed all the times and laws in his kingdom to make the people one people. And the people resisted against Antiochus Epiphanes. They said, we will not change our way of worship in the least. All those that are faithful unto Yehovah, follow me. And they left behind all that they owned, fleeing into the mountains. This same scenario exists today. Antiochus Epiphanes put a Greek idol into the temple and told all of the empire and all of the kingdom to worship it. So what has happened? How is this depicting the church? Well, there's now a Greek idol that all the world worships, and his name is Jesus. Jesus is a Greek name. So all the world's worshiping this idol, but they're also forsaking the Sabbath. They're forsaking the dietary laws. They're forsaking his feast day. They changed his times. They say, oh, we're going to worship on Sunday. Then they say, we're going to keep Easter, Christmas, all these pagan holidays, which they think is okay because it's attributed to Jesus, not realizing that it's idolatry to even be worshiping Jesus. So the same scenario that Antiochus Epiphanes put the Jews through is happening with the church. That's what time times half a times is. It was a period of persecution that the Jews faced during the time of the Maccabean revolt. And then they cleansed the temple and rededicated it back to God. That's why we have the celebration of Hanukkah. So it's your job, Christian, it's your job to be able to overcome that like the Jews did way back in 167 BC. But you don't see it because your heart is not inclined to seek after God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And you have to overcome it, because when the day comes, when the laborers are given their hire and everybody receives a penny and you're standing there naked, you don't receive a penny. That's when you'll be put through the fire of God's jealousy, and he will have to convert you into a pure language where you would call upon his name with one consent. That's what this seal is depicting. So it's always going to be your choice. If it happens this year, then it would be on May 3rd. Now, how does this correspond to the days that I'm talking about? Well, if you viewed February as being the first month, then that would mean that May 3rd would actually be the day of Noah's flood. It would also be the day of Shavuot, and it could also, by modern Hillel 2 calendars, be a day after the second unleavened bread. It all comes together depending on your perspective of that day. And in that time and in that day, you're going to have to choose between Yehovah, Yahweh, and Jesus. So you still have time, but you're going to have to forsake all that you have, your friends, your family, that are telling you, no, how dare you leave the church? How dare you deny Jesus? Whatever it is that they're going to tell you, you're going to have to be put through the test to see if you're willing to forsake everything you have to keep the covenant that God gave. Just like Judas Maccabee and Mattathias, who led the Maccabean revolt, and they were faithful to the covenant under persecution. That's the test for the world. That's the test of the church. And it's up to you to make that choice. But you're going to have to seek and find with all your heart, your soul, and your mind to be able to let that thought marinate in your heart so that you would have confidence in the God of Israel. So when this time comes, if it is May 3rd this year, then the reason there's only 1 measure of wheat and 3 measures of barley is because you've had 3 months of barley to be produced, whereas you only had that 1 period of time for the wheat to be produced. That's what this is depicting. Does this make sense? So Judah, Jews, you are the laborers of the field. So when the laborers are called and they all receive their penny, they will go to Jerusalem. They will go where God promised that the faithful to his covenant would go. Not to heaven, they're going to go to Jerusalem, to Zion. That's the promise that God gave. And then all of the delusions that the church has taught you, all your fears will come upon you. That's what God says in Isaiah chapter 66. He says, I will choose their delusions and bring their fears upon them, because when I called, none did answer, and chose that which I delighted not. So it's up to you to listen to the God of Israel. Before the time comes, when the kingdom arrives and Israel's redemption comes, and you hear these words, but at that point it's too late. The door will now be shut, just like the day when Noah entered the ark and the door was shut, and we enter our wedding chambers and we shut the door behind us, just like God spoke in the book of Isaiah, until the indignation be overpassed. So those that keep his covenant and keep his marriage contract, they go to Jerusalem while the world goes through a time of trial where they have to actually go through a period of refinement to get them all to come back to the God of Israel and call upon his name. So I hope that clears up what this third seal is. It is a calling of the laborers, to beginning from the time of Passover, which looks like came early this year, until the time of Shavuot in the 3rd month. Everybody receives a penny, regardless of when they decided to become a laborer or become a Jew and keep the covenant that God gave. Everybody receives a penny for their labor. So you can still be a laborer right now. At the time of this recording, it is April 1st, 2026. So if the timing of the redemption is on May 3rd of this year, you have time to become a laborer into the field, and you will go to Jerusalem. But you're going to have to be willing to forsake everything you have. Your husband, your wife, your parents, everyone's going to come at you and say, how dare you do that? And you're going to have to suffer persecution, but that's the point. You got to be willing to forsake all that you have. I've done it. Plenty of us have done it. And that'll just show and prove that you trust in the God of Israel and not a man named Jesus. I know this might be offensive. I say this in every single one of my videos, but now's not the time to be tiptoeing around and trying to appease the crowds. Nothing that I say is going against the word of the God of Israel. The God of Israel says his covenant is for 1,000 generations to those that love him, and he repays those that hate him to their face. So if you don't want to keep his covenant, then what's coming is he will repay you to your face, and he will send the tormentors against you, and he will put you through the fire, and you'll go through the things that you feared that would happen. All this idea about a rapture to heaven, taking you to heaven, being left behind, that fear will come to you. All this idea about a tribulation period, that fear will come to you. But if you keep the covenant that God gave at Mount Sinai, he will bring you to Jerusalem but you have to overcome it. If you have any questions on this, let me know. If this video gave you understanding and clarity, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and get this word out to people before the time comes. Again, if it is this year, it would be on May 3rd this year. I'm making the video to try to give you understanding about what the seal in Revelation is talking about so that you would become a laborer yourself. So again, leave your comments below and I'll talk to you again on another video. Take care.
Shadows start to fade as the truth comes in sight. On the fourth day, he said, let there be light. Let there be light.